Excuse me? Oh, okay. Thank you. Anyway, so if you create a new fund or project in Financial Edge, you have to do the same thing in Razor's Edge. And then there's information that you can have on both of the records in Razor's Edge or Financial Edge that you may want to be able to synchronize with the other product and the other Blackbaud product. So we developed something called Sync Harmony, and what I'm going to do is bring up its configuration pages and talk about it. The first thing within Sync Harmony is you'll notice that we have a Sync configuration page. On the Sync configuration page, you'll notice at the top of the screen there are several different tabs. The first tab basically is a configurator tab, and then we work with you when we set this up. It takes very, very little time to set up to actually connect to the databases where Razor's Edge and Financial Edge exist. Once we do that and we have those connected, then we go about actually doing the configuration of the product. Within the product, you can tell it to do a couple of things. We can tell it that we want to how we want to handle messages, whether we want to show messages, we don't want to show messages, or maybe only error messages, or no message at all. And we can also tell it, you know what, I don't want to sync from one way to the other. So we have the ability with our syncs to sync from Razor's Edge to Financial Edge, from Financial Edge back to Razor's Edge, or one to the other. So we could say, I don't really want to sync from Razor's Edge to Financial Edge, but anytime I change something in Financial Edge, I want to make sure it syncs back to Razor's Edge. Or I could do it vice versa. So we have those capabilities at the overall, at what we call the highest level. And then we're going to get into something called, one of our first tabs that we're going to sync are the funds. And with that, what this does is that when you first open it up, it goes out to Razor's Edge and Financial Edge. It says, bring me all those fields that you have out there so that we can identify what we want to do with those. So within Razor's Edge and Financial Edge, you have what we call the fund fields or the project fields. These are the first level fields. We identify what they are, and we identify if we're going to sync them or not and what we're going to sync them to. So when I talk about the first level fields, if I go into Razor's Edge, and I go into a fund, the first level fields are the ones on this page right here. So we have the ability to sync these on this page to the same ones, Financial Edge, on this page. Okay? Now, we know some of you, we've already seen that you actually have the ability to change these labels and have named them other things, but we actually look at what the underlying data is so we know how to configure these. So, but we can identify what we want to be able to do there. So within that, if we go back to our configurator, basically, for example, I want to say I want the description field. What type is it? It's the field level, and I want to sync it to the field level in the target. So this says in Razor's Edge, I'm going to go here to this field, and I'm going to sync it to the target name over in Financial Edge, and vice versa. In Financial Edge, I'm going to sync it back the other way. We also have the ability to say, within that, maybe I have a field that I want to sync, maybe it's an attribute in one of the on the other side, and say in Financial Edge, whereas in Razor's Edge it's not. So here's a classic a situation where the category field is an attribute in Financial Edge. So we're going to actually sync this first level field to an attribute in Financial Edge, and then when we sync it back in Financial Edge, we're going to go over here, and we're going to tell it we want to sync it let me just scroll up through here and find category, fund category. There it is right here. So we say we're going to take the attribute, which this is my attribute section in Financial Edge, and we're going to sync that back to the actual first level field in Razor's Edge. So we have the ability to go through and configure however you want to set this up, whether you want to sync fields, you don't want to sync fields, do you want to sync them to first level fields or first levels to attributes or attributes to first levels. We have all those different ways you can do that. And as we always say, proof is in the pudding. So let's go look and see how that works. So we save this, and I'm going to minimize, and I'm going to go into, I'll start with Razor's Edge, and I'm going to take that particular field, and I'm going to change something here. So I'm going to change it to call Sync Harmony Demo 6/2/2016. Type. Okay. And then I'm going to change the fund category to annual, for example. And maybe I'll change the date to 01. So we have changed that information, and then when I save this, I have it set to actually show me a message, and the message said Sync Harmony RE to FE has completed. So I said, okay. So remember we changed the name of it, we changed the start date, and we changed the actual fund category. So I can close this. I can go into Financial Edge, open up that same record in Financial Edge, and what you'll see is the name of the description has changed. The actual start date changed here, and since that category was an attribute, if we go to the Attribute tab, you'll actually see that it changed the fund category attribute to Annual. And so that's the actual synchronization that happens between the two. So if we want to change it back, maybe we can make an endowment, and we'll change it back to 16, and we'll get rid of that piece of it, and say Save and Close. And when we do that, it says the Sync Harmony FE to RE is completed. So when the sync happens, it happens on the save. So when you do the save, it's when the sync actually happens. So I'm going to close this and go back into Razor's Edge. And if I open that record back up, you can see now that the description is once changed back to Sync Harmony. The date was changed, and it changed the category back to endowment. So that's the basis of the fund sync between RE and FE. And one of the other neat things that we did was if I save this, close it, and get out of it, and I go back into Financial Edge and say, you know what, I'm going to create a new fund. So I create a new fund in Financial Edge, and I'm going to pick a number, Lisa.
12.
No, give me a four-digit number like in the start sheet.
4013.
14013. Hopefully we don't have another fund number out there called that. So, Lisa, fund. And we'll put some attributes out there. Let's see what we'll put out there. Endowment manager, to white. Fund category, let's make it restricted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save and close this. I've got to remember what the name of it is, 4013. Save and close. Okay, so right now, what happened is, it says there's a value that I chose that is invalid for what's out there. And I did this on purpose because I want to show you that it will show information when it does the sync won't happen correctly. So what's happened is it's trying to go out and create a new fund in Razor's Edge, but it can't do that because the category that I chose that we have set up in Financial Edge does not exist over on the Razor's Edge side. So we need to go fix that. So if we go to, back into that, go into Fund Type, what do I have out there? I don't remember what I call them. Maybe it's Donor Advised. And do a save. All right, so now it says the Sync Harmony has actually completed. So we're going to say OK. And then if I go into Razor's Edge and I look for that fund, open a fund, 4013, you'll notice now I have a fund in Razor's Edge called 4013 with that information, of which I did not have before. So instead of having to go in and create a new fund in Razor's Edge every time you create a new fund in Financial Edge, this does it for you automatically. Now, one of the things that it does not do, just so you know, is it does not create the GL distribution. You'll still have to make that happen. Okay, but other than that, it actually creates that. So basically, that is the fund sync from Razor's Edge to Financial Edge and Financial Edge to Razor's Edge with the fund creation if you do create a new fund in Financial Edge. One of the other things that we then added after that, well, that was what we started with. That's what people wanted first. So we built that piece, and then someone said, well, you know, we want to be able to synchronize constituents and vendors, where vendors are in Financial Edge and constituents are in Razor's Edge. So we said, okay. But one of the biggest problems we had with the constituent vendor sync, problem we had with the constituent vendor sync is the fact that, you know, we can set it up and we can do everything the exact same way, but there's one thing that we didn't have, and that was the ability to tie the two together with something that was unique, so that we knew that when we tied a constituent to a vendor, it was the correct one. So what we did was we said, well, in Razor's on the fund side, we used the fund number as the key. So we needed to have some sort of a key that we could utilize to be able to tie the constituents to the vendor. So what we did was we said, if I go to a constituent record, we said, what can there be unique in the constituent record that we could utilize? And so, give me a second for this to open. So if you look at this, there's an ID field here. It's called a constituent ID for this particular vendor. So we have this vendor in Razor's Edge with an ID of 108. In Financial Edge, if I go to the vendor in Financial Edge in AP, and I look it up, it has a particular vendor ID as well. So we said, let's figure out how we tie those together. So what we did was we created an attribute in Financial Edge called constituent ID. And in that attribute, we put in the number of the ID for the constituent from Razor's Edge, which is 108 in this case. In addition to that, in Financial Edge, we said, how do we tie that one back? So we know that the vendor ID was 100011. So we said, okay, in Razor's Edge, we're going to create a constituent ID. And we're going to create an attribute over there, and we're going to vendor ID called 10111. So that's how we tie those two together. So in addition to that, so now we have them tied together. So if we change some information related to those organizations, some of the key fields, and basically it's around the name, it's around the address lines, and we actually can identify which address that you want to be able to sync. So we do that. We can change the address, for example. And I'll just change it there. And I'm going to change, if I want to change the name, for example, I could actually do that too. And do a save. So I get my message that said we did the synchronization. So if I go into Financial Edge and open up South Carolina Blood Bank, you notice it's changed the vendor name and it changed the address. So we have the ability, once again, to identify which address that you want to be able to sync those with. But we can sync the attributes. We can sync the first level fields like we do for a fund, and then you choose which address that you want to be able to do for the actual fund, the vendor record and the constituent record within Razor's Edge Financial Edge. So that's the piece on that one. So that's how that works. We have one more thing that some may use and some may not use, but we had a client specifically ask for it, and it had to do with actions. We know in Razor's Edge, there is no action tab on the fund record. In fact, a lot of foundations will go in, or nonprofits will actually go in and create a fund organization record to be able to have actions associated with a particular fund. So this particular client did not want to be able to actually create those records. They thought it was kind of redundant. But they did notice that they had an actions tab in the fund in Financial Edge. So what we said was we would go in and create, this is a one-way sync, by the way. It goes from Razor's Edge only. So it goes from Razor's Edge to Financial Edge, and it only does it if the record doesn't exist in this case, so if the action's not already there. So if you go into a record in Razor's Edge, and we'll go back and we'll use the South Carolina Blood Bank, and we'll go to the Action tab. And here I can create a new action. I can identify the action type. The date, a lot of different things that you can do. You can actually show if it was completed or not on a certain date. And if you associate it with a particular fund, then it will actually sync this information over to the Fund Action tab in Financial Edge. So I'm going to save that, and it's going to say it did the sync. So if I go to I did it twice. Sorry, my bad. So if I go to Financial Edge and open up that particular fund, and I go to the action here, it will actually show the fact that we just created another action for this particular organization. So that kind of helps them with that product and not having to have redundant information all over the place. So that's the other piece about how the action actually works. So with that said, and I'm looking at the number of participants we have, I'm going to actually open up just a little bit to questions. So if you have some questions you would like to ask, we'll just kind of just jump in there one at a time, and we'll try to get those answered. And then after that, we do the question and answer session. Then I'm going to have Brian Roberts, who is pretty new to our organization. He's been here for a little while yet, but he's actually working in one of our sales roles, get in contact with each of you just for the follow-up. So,
and I'll give them where they can find a product sheet on this as well.
Exactly, and Lisa will identify where the product sheet is. So if anybody has any questions, you want to go ahead and start?
Or what do they think of it? Tell me what you think of the product.
Hey, Matt, this is Ann. How are you?
Hey, Ann, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I sent you a chat question. So, in our case, we set up our vendor and constituent numbers to match.
Okay.
All that being said, I'm assuming we would have to set up all those attributes first for that sync to work.
Well, the attributes the way the attributes work is that for the sync to work for the constituent to vendor, we'd have to set up a constituent ID attribute in Financial Edge and a vendor ID attribute in Raiser's Edge. So with that, what we would do is we would actually, if you already have your ID set up, we would actually just do an import into each one of the products that would add that in.
So does it not sync a new record? It just syncs current records?
It only syncs current records for the constituent records. The only time it creates a new record right now in the current version of the product, okay, is when you create a new fund in Financial Edge. But
okay,
one of the things that we're continuing to develop the product, so we're looking for all different kinds of recommendations to make it better. Okay?
All right. And can you sync notes from the RE action to fund?
Yes, you can.
FE action? Okay.
Yes, you can sync notes, yes.
You know, where do the notes sync to?
There's actually a note place on the record. We've actually identified a couple of places. There's a notes tab that actually goes on the financial on the vendor record. Let me see if I can find it. Right here. We actually create on the notes tab. For example, we tell it the type of action it was, so that's configurable within the system, and it will actually sync the note in there.
We can't see your screen. You paused the screen sharing.
Hold on one second. I was reading the chat. I'm sorry.
All right.
Can you see it now?
So
can you see it now?
on the notes tab, not on the action tab. Oh. So you get action added and a note added.
Right, so what happens is, so it actually puts the description in here, right? But then on the note tab, it actually creates a note in here with a type of an action type, whatever you want to call the type, and it puts that information in here. So we'll actually create a note in there for you. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Philip asked the question, how does it treat addresses that are already on the invoices? Or cannot sync addresses that are already... Well, we can't change an address on an invoice if the invoice has already been created because it's not an invoice sync. It's basically just a sync for the vendor. So the next time that you utilize it, they would actually update that invoice based on the address based on what you're syncing it with in Raiser's Edge. Okay, did that get your answer, Philip? I guess it did. The next question I had was, when a fund name is too long to fit in Financial Edge and it doesn't sync, does the rest of the information sync? Everything syncs, but what happens is because of the limitation by Blackbaud, it actually just truncates the name.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
Happens today, right? And then another question from Nancy, are the attributes added manually? Typically, most all attributes are always added manually, but they can be imported. If you want to be able to add attributes like the constituent ID or the vendor ID for the actual constituent sync to vendor sync, we can actually do an import that would actually import those into both products. Did anybody? I think that was all the questions in the chat. Did anybody else have any more questions?
Okay, I was going to let you know we do have a product sheet on Sync Harmony, and it's located on our website. We are still working on a new website, but you'll be able to see firsthand what it looks like. If you go to the tab that says What About Us and go to the bottom, it'll say Nonprofit Solutions. If you click on that, it'll be under Harmony Products. We actually are creating several add-ons for our GE Spectrum product, and Sync Harmony happened to be the first one. We also have another one you'll be hearing about later called...
Just one thing. Sync Harmony is not a GE Spectrum product.
Oh, okay.
It's just it's a standalone product that works for RE and FE, whether they have that or not.
All right, but it's created by Fusion Labs.
Yes,
Sorry.
just another one of our products.
It's called an add-on. But anyway, you'll see a product sheet there on that page that you can download. And for some of you that joined late, it's possible I can get you the recording. And again, we'll be doing this again next week on the 9th at 1 p.m. if you have anybody else who's interested in seeing it. As Matt mentioned, we're excited to announce Brian Roberts joining our team. He comes to us from iDonate, which some of you might be aware of that product. He's going to be our Barton here in our home office. He'll be working really closely with Barton up there on the East Coast, but we're going to have him contact each of you, just see if you had any other questions, if you need the video, if you had trouble getting the product sheet downloaded, any information you might need about this product. So Brian will start getting in touch when, Brian?
Yeah, as soon as this afternoon. I look forward to working with all of you.
Okay, but there's no more questions, and thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Brian. Once again, we appreciate you all spending the time with us to look at our one of our Harmony products. And as Lisa stated, if you have any questions, feel free to back to us, and we'll be getting back to you, I'm sure. So thanks, everybody, and have a great day.